Hey guys, today's episode with Justin Simmons, the Denver Broncos Pro Bowl safety, is presented by Convoy of Hope. Check out convoynation.com to learn how you can get involved with this amazing ministry. And what they do is they advocate and serve those in need by delivering hot meals and groceries and haircuts, health and dental screenings, family portraits, socks, shoes, clothing, hygiene kits, and much more. They serve the communities in need throughout the world with Convoy Nation. Check out convoynation.com to learn more and to be a part of this great ministry. convoynation.com.
Welcome to Sports Spectrum, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, former ESPN producer, Jason Romano.
And welcome to the show. I am Jason Romano. This is the Sports Spectrum podcast. We got a great program for you today, a great conversation with Justin Simmons, the Denver Broncos Pro Bowl safety. I'll tell you a little bit more about Justin in a second. First, I want to direct you to our website, sportspectrum.com. That's our conversation starter, if you will, a place to go for all of our content on the intersection of sports and faith. And when I say conversation starter, I mean you can take the articles, the devotionals, the podcasts that are on our website and share them and forward them to others. It's a great way to start a conversation about sports and intersect the conversation with something greater and something more important, and that is the gospel of Jesus Christ. So check out our website, sportspectrum.com, and when you're there, click on the newsletter icon at the top. You can sign up for our weekly newsletter to stay in touch with all that we have going on at Sports Spectrum. And maybe you missed an article or a podcast, you didn't see it, you didn't know it was out there. Well, that's what this newsletter is about. It's updating you on all that we have going on at Sports Spectrum. And when you sign up, you just put your email in there. We actually have a free gift, a 10-day daily devotional written by professional athletes. Yes, the pro athletes themselves wrote these devotionals, and it's a great way to stay in touch with the Lord, to supplement your time with God. Maybe you have a Bible teaching, a Bible reading. Maybe you're part of a small group. Well, take this 10-day devotional. It's a digital download that comes right to your email inbox, and you can use that as well to help grow in your faith with the Lord. You sign up today at sportspectrum.com. It's all free. Just click that newsletter icon, and you're good to go. All right, today's conversation is with Justin Simmons, and we had Justin on back in 2019. And during that conversation, he shared his testimony and his walk with the Lord. But at that time, he was getting ready for a season that would set him up for free agency. And he talked about kind of being, wrestling with God a little bit about what this was going to look like, how he knew he was not in control. And it's turned out pretty good for him because he signed a big 4-year contract this past offseason earlier this year. And that comes off of a season in 2020 where he had a career high 5 interceptions, 96 total tackles, and was named as a Pro Bowler. Pro Football Focus named him as a first-team All-Pro in 2019 and a second-team All-Pro in 2020. Originally selected by Denver in the 2016 NFL Draft in the 3rd round, he's now entering his 6th NFL season. Today's conversation takes us into some fairly deep places. I think you're going to enjoy the vulnerability and the authenticity of Justin Simmons, the Denver Broncos Pro Bowl safety. He joins us here today on Sports Spectrum. What's up, Justin? Welcome back to the show.
Hey, what's up, Jason? Thanks so much for having me, man. It feels good to be back.
Absolutely. Last time we talked, I think we were on the phone, so it's good to actually see you, even though we're recording this on Zoom. Congrats on the new deal, by the way, with Denver. I have to imagine it feels pretty good to know you get to remain with the same team that drafted you and play a few more years there.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the congratulations, and it feels great. It feels great. I think, for myself and my family, it would just felt awesome because we knew that we wanted to call, Denver home just a little bit longer.
Sure.
And, the mutual feeling, like we wanted to be here. Denver wanted me, to stay. And so that's always a great feeling, right? You don't always get that You don't always get that type of treatment all the time in the NFL. And so it was a emotional and experience, but one that, my family and I have cherished and will cherish, and just excited to make more memories in Denver.
No, that's good. We had you back on. I think it was in the summer of 2019. You were getting ready for that upcoming season. And I remember you mentioned you were going to try and not think about free agency and a contract. And then you were franchised last year in 2020, and then the pandemic and everything else with that going on. What was going through that time as an athlete, trying not to worry about the business side of it, trusting in God that he was going to make a way, but also knowing that it was there. It was kind of looming, and you had to kind of confront that when it was time to confront that. What was all that like for you?
Yeah, it was definitely a huge experience, like faith wise. I think
Hmm.
there's that time where you can always say the right things, right? Like, it's God's plan, not my plan. This could be his plan for me could be to never play another snap. It could be to, do this, it could do that. And I think that was the biggest growth though for me. I remember having constant conversations with my wife, my parents, my brothers, who I always talk about. I have a few select friends that I speak with on
Mm-hmm.
like a weekly basis, and we do like Bible studies, and we just hold each other accountable. And my team chaplain, we just met like multiple times. I felt like I was just being counseled by multiple people, which really gave me the headspace to be able to compartmentalize and to focus on, hey, look, you do what you need to do, football wise, go out there, audience of one, right? Give God the glory. And then everything else will take care of itself. There's not, I'm not going to make a contract happen because I want it to happen. As much as, the front office people are in control. I mean, ultimately God's the one that's in control. If it's going to happen, God obviously will make it happen. And so that was like it was just like a huge thing for me. I'm like, well, I'm doing all the right things. Like, do I need to do something else? Like, what am I doing wrong? Blah, blah, blah. And it was just a spiritual tug, and it really, a lot of the times I saw how selfish, I was in situations like, man, that mindset of like, well, I'm doing this, and, this guy's doing this and that, you know what I mean? And so,
Mm-hmm.
it was challenging, and it took a lot of conversations, like I said, with my team chaplain, some friends that we do weekly studies with, and things like that. And but one that I'm so thankful for, just the growth through it all, really having a deeper relationship throughout the season was something that I really appreciated.
Well, you still had, and you also were able to have two really good seasons when you think back to 2020 and then, or 2019, I should say, and 2020 last year. Your seasons, those were pretty great seasons. And yet, everything you just described is happening. How were you able to put all that aside and go out on the field and still produce, and not just produce, but we're talking about Pro Bowls, and we're talking about some really awesome opportunities for you to shine and do well on the field. I know for Pro Football Focus, they had you as a first team All Pro in 2019 and a second team All Pro in 2020. So you're having great years on the field, but you have all of that you just described going on in the background. How are you able to put all that aside and still go out on the field and do your thing?
Yeah, I mean, not easy at all. Like I said, I had to be vulnerable, which I'm just personally not comfortable with. I mean, outside of maybe conversations with my wife, like I'm just not really a vulnerable, good with sharing my emotions and my feelings with, with my friends and sometimes even family. And so with my team chaplain and some good buddies of mine that we have, do Bible studies with, like it was hard for me to like really open up and truly tell them how I felt, like really outside of, like I said, my wife and obviously God. Like no one else would have really have known, right? And so but opening up and having those conversations with them, I think really lightened the load, like in terms of just my mental weight,
Hmm.
and it really helped me to be able to focus. I mean, they prayed over exactly what I was going through, and prayer is so powerful. And I feel like, at least in my life, is so, I would say, like underrated. There's a lot of the times where I just, I sometimes have to take 30 seconds to be like, all right, well, let me bring my, I'm just going into prayer, and I'm like, just like, hey, God, make this happen, or whatever. Like
Yeah.
I'm not even positioning my heart the right way. I feel like, it says in scriptures that like there's times where, we'll pray and, we're just heading into ground where angels like tread lightly. You're talking about the creator of creation. And it's just, there's times where I'm like, well, let me position my heart the right way before I approach this and sound completely ignorant talking to God in my prayers. And so it was like I said, it was just crazy. And honestly, the only way I was able to do it was with the community of people that I had. There's nothing that I really did that was really special about it, other than just having those special people in my life just praying over me and just letting God take care of the rest.
One of the names you keep mentioning is your team chaplain. I'll say his name, Reza Zadeh, who is the team chaplain for the Denver Broncos. I say his name, Justin, because Reza is now going to be hosting a podcast with Sports Spectrum called Inside the Chapel that is starting very soon. He's co-hosting with Icky Soma, who is the team chaplain with the Houston Rockets, and they're going to be taking us to different team chaplain services across the country and having those chaplains share the same message that they would share with you to our audience on a podcast. So I'm really excited because it's going to be a teaching podcast that's out. People will be able to download it. We'll put a link in the show notes and all that. But that leads me to Reza's impact on you. And just when you arrive in 2016 and you're there in Denver and you're, young kid trying to figure out where you fit, and your faith is important to you, obviously, but a guy like Reza is there to really encourage you. Take me through what kind of impact he's had on your journey of faith through your time with Denver. And, obviously there's confidentiality on some things. You don't want to share everything, but you've already said that he's been a really important part of your life in this spiritual journey.
Oh, 100%. Reza has been such an integral part of what I've experienced throughout my short professional career. I mean, the grace in his voice and in our conversations is something that I think I just admire every single time we talk. No matter how prideful I sound or humble I sound, there's always room for growth in my relationship with the Lord and understanding Scripture. And the thing I think I appreciate the most is now, like, we've built up a relationship now where we're breaking down and working through different books in Scripture and verse by verse. And I'm so used to and I'm so accustomed to reading my study Bible and just trying to, now I have a Dr. Tony Evans study Bible, and I'm so used to reading, and I'm like, oh, I don't get that, and then just going straight to reading, what Dr. Evans put at the bottom, or whoever you have, whatever study Bible you have, and I appreciate Reza because now it's like, okay, well, I mean, the study Bible was great, right? But let's break this down. Let's see how what you think, compare it. We'll come back in a week, we'll talk over it, then we'll go look at the bottom, and we'll see how you did. Like, really trying to understand and break down, line by line, verse by verse, like what's going on in Scripture. What do you think? How do you think his disciples react to this? How do you think the Pharisees react? And that's what I really appreciate, because I'm not just going to Reza and we're reading something that's like uplifting, like, hey, here's what God says about your future. Here's what. No, we're looking at Jesus's life, the impact that he had, what that means now, what that meant then, and how it translates to now. And I could just feel my faith just growing, my relationship growing, because I'm just taking a deeper dive into Scripture and understanding what's going on. And Reza knows that's what I appreciate the most. And it's just been amazing. I really appreciate that about him.
Well, that's discipleship in a lot of ways. And there's a difference, right, between going to church or going to a chapel service, which is a good thing, and you should go. But there's a difference between that and really, and even more than just having somebody to talk to, a counselor, which a lot of chaplains can play that role as well. But this sounds like it's discipleship, and that's a deeper level. How important was that for you, and how unique is that maybe from your perspective in the journey that you've taken with the Lord?
It's been the most important thing I honestly, I think I've experienced not only in my professional career, but I just think life in general. I'm a guy, my story of coming to find Christ, a big part of that is, sports was an idol in my life, and didn't really find that out till I got to college, wrestled with that, even still after confronting it, still wrestled to that to this day. And so I appreciate Reza because we go over a lot of tough things, like really like heart checking things that we just happen to fall upon when we're going through scripture, when we're going through books in the Bible. And like I said, he always approaches it with grace. I never feel like condemned by what he approaches and what we're talking about in scripture. My heart, feels a little uneasy at times just because it's in human nature, but I'm so thankful for it because in our sport, like there's a lot of self promotion that goes on, right? You're talking about all pros and Pro Bowls, and
Right.
you want to be the best, and you want to sound confident in what you're doing, and so that a lot of the times, subconsciously, it just becomes so natural to wrapping up to your personality, and so a lot of the times I have to get checked, like, hey, how's your heart? How are you feeling about this? There's that middle ground. You never want to be too high. Obviously, you don't want to be too low. And it's just being thankful for the platform that the Lord has temporarily, handed me. And what am I doing with it? And I just think I'm just so thankful for Reza because those are the things that keep coming up. Like, hey, I love that you made this. You got this accolade. That's awesome. We celebrate. But more importantly, how's your relationship with the Lord? How are you doing with this? How are you doing with that? And I love that because football is temporary.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be doing this forever. I would obviously love to, can't do it. Everyone would love to. And so I just love that because what's the most important thing is my relationship with Christ. And I'm just so thankful for that because Reza always and has always put that first in our conversations. And I love that.
Hey guys, let's take a quick break from our conversation here on Sports Spectrum to tell you a little bit more about our friends, our partners, Convoy of Hope. They are a faith-based international humanitarian relief organization, and they have one simple goal: to bring help and hope to those who are impoverished, who are hungry, and who are hurting. You can check them out at convoynation.com. Convoy of Hope is all about engaging, caring, nourishing, growing, responding, and partnering. They do such amazing work. And I'm talking about providing things like free groceries, health and dental screenings, haircuts, family portraits, hot meals, job placement assistance, and much more. They hold these events all around the country that people can get involved with and actually serve and help those in need. But there's also ways for you and I to get involved. Maybe there's not an event right in our backyard, but we can get involved with Convoy of Hope. We can start our own event. We can donate. We can pray for the work that they are doing. They are a great organization. I highly recommend. Sports Spectrum loves being involved with these guys, and we highly recommend that you would get involved as well. You can check them out at convoynation.com. Check them out at convoynation.com. You can donate, you can pray, and you can be a part of the great work that they are doing, supporting Convoy of Hope's innovative international programs. Check out convoynation.com. We're glad to have Justin Simmons here on Sports Spectrum. I want to go back to a little over a year ago. It was the summer of 2020, right? Race conversations were escalating, political tension, the pandemic. Like you said, you're trying to prepare for a season in a unique and different way than any other year leading up to the 2020 NFL season. When you tell your kids one day about 2020, and I know you got one and one on the way, I believe, correct? So that's exciting. When you tell those kids in 5 or 10 or 20 years about 2020, what do you think will be top of mind for you?
I would just say how I was really just a big time of growth. Once again, in my relationship and my personal relationship with Christ. And I would just share that, with them and looking back on some events in 2020, how important it is to empathize and to have sympathy and with with your fellow person, whoever that is, whoever you interact with, we have no idea what other people are going through. And I felt like, and there was a lot of conversations that were being had, and I've had a lot of conversations. My wife had a lot of conversations, a lot of tough conversations, but
Yeah.
the inability to maybe not fully understand, but still, like I said, that empathy factor, not fully understanding, but still feel, pain and sorrow. That's what I think I took the most out of 2020. And I would love to share, like, it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to not understand, but still want to be there, want to help, want to understand, want to be better in all aspects of whatever is going on. And that's how I just look at, and I'm just trying to picture, like, you know, that's how I imagine, Christ. I look at the woman at the well, and he's passing, he goes out of his way to go to Samaria. The disciples go into town and specifically stops for, a woman that just thought of herself like way less than Jesus obviously thought of her. And that in that conversation, and he was like, listen, I know what I know what you did. I know what you're doing, but I'm calling you higher, and I love you anyway. And I am he who you're speaking of, being the Messiah.
Yeah.
And I just look at that and I'm like, that's how I want to be for other people. Like, I don't want to, who cares like what you've done and what you did and whatever, like, we all have past, we all have scars. Like, I just care about empathizing, being there for you, showing you that, like, this is the type of love that's waiting for you, and it's even greater, like talking about a personal relationship with Christ. And so those are the things that I remember, and just like had a lot of like heart wrestling conversations, and not all good on my side either, like, having to be able to, I'm an argumentative person, and so having to be able to be like, listen, there's no point in defending this. There's sometimes I just need to take a step back and just let things handle themselves. And so yeah, it's a lot. I'm kind of rambling at this point. There's so many emotions that just come, to the front of my mind. But that would be the biggest thing I think I'd love to share, with my children in the future, is like, just empathy and sympathy for others. I think that goes such a long way.
Did you find yourself wrestling with your flesh on how to react from a worldly perspective versus a godly perspective, versus seeing it through the lens of Christ versus through the lens of social media or through the lens of television or through the lens of the world, and how to react to all that was taking place last year? Because I know you mentioned, you are, sort of not an introvert, but somebody who's not out there letting, yourself know all your feelings out there, all that type of thing. But yet you were out there. I think you were at a couple of rallies. At least I think I saw one of them last year where you were there speaking. So something, provoked you to want to do something about it, right? And to not just sit at home and watch the news or read social media. But did you find yourself struggling with the flesh a little bit as a follower of Christ and being identified as that, versus whether you're a black man or whether you're just a human being who's seeing what's going on and wrestling with how to respond from your flesh versus from faith?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing I struggled with. There are so many emotional ties into what I was seeing, people saying. And for me, the biggest problem that I had was not necessarily people that I knew to be unbelievers, or I know, necessarily don't have a relationship, with the Lord, but it was really the people that had, I know, like my home church had a relationship with, with Christ. And then, hearing them say things that I felt like were very unchrist like, not calling them, non-believers, but just like things that I'd be like, I'm not sure Jesus would co-sign,
Sure.
saying that. And that's where I struggle, because here they are saying, X, Y, and Z about what's going on. And then a lot of the times my response is X, Y, and Z back. And I'm no better, talking to them the same way that they would be talking to, whatever crowd they were speaking to. And that's where like the emotional introverted, but I really want to say something.
Yeah.
Justin was just like, like I just just pulling at my heartstrings. And that's really when I was speaking on, like, my relationship with Christ. I mean, that was just like, we're talking about in quarantine, that was just a rocky road. Like I had to be on constant calls with Reza, and I had to get off social media. There's so many things that I like wanted to go out and talk about and say, and you get in virtual arguments and those are never any good. And
Yeah.
there was just so much there. Yeah, it was so much weighing on I felt like, honestly, like, I was telling my wife, we go to counseling, and I was telling our counselor, I said, I haven't really shared this with anyone outside of my wife, but like, I feel like I was in like a stage of just depression. Like, I was just really like not myself, and really focused on all the negative things that were being said, and how my rhetoric was to respond to that.
Hmm.
And it just wasn't healthy. Yeah, it just wasn't healthy. And so, yeah, that was the biggest thing, man. You're talking about hearing, people say something, and my automatic response wasn't even a Christ-like response. It was like, well, wait, here's my rebuttal. Here's what I, need you to hear. Here's my argument. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, that was a lot.
You mentioned counseling. Why is that important for you to do that? I mean, I think there's a stigma in counseling. I think mental health is starting to be an important part of people's journey, and it's becoming more, especially in the church out there, that it's an important thing. But a lot of people hear counseling, they think, oh, it's because something's wrong, so I need to go get that fixed. And yet I feel like, yeah, something's wrong because we're human and
Yeah.
we're all messed up and we need help in counseling. I is counseling so important for you?
Yeah, counseling, I thought the same way, honestly. And it wasn't until I was reaching, like, I wouldn't even say extreme emotional, like depression or anxiety or anger or anything like that. But I just realized, like, I'm not myself. I don't know how to communicate this properly,
Mm.
to my wife. And I just know, like, there's this stigma. I've always heard that there's this stigma behind, counseling and things like that, and mental health, especially for a guy.
Right.
And you're playing football, and just rub dirt on it, you'll be all right. You suck it up, and you just move forward. You put your head down and you keep working. And there was just, I just kept praying about it. I told the Lord, like, really work in my heart. I really want to do counseling, and my wife and I have always wanted to do counseling. So we do marriage counseling, and it's helped tremendously. A lot of tough conversations, but
Mm.
it's helped tremendously because it's helped me to be able to communicate way more efficiently with my wife, and being able to, for her especially, being, the most important. Like, I need to be able to tell her exactly, like, what I'm feeling, how I'm feeling. And there are a lot of cycles that, couples will go through, and it's breaking those cycles, understanding, like, hey, we're on the same team. I may not have expressed, something the way I should, or I may not have done something that I may have done something that I know you probably, don't like, as whatever. But like you said, we're human. We make mistakes. It's not out of spite. There are a lot of things that I just know we both need to work on so we can better each other. And I like to think of it as, like, I think for the most part in every aspect of our lives, like, we get checked up on, right? You go to the dentist for your teeth, and you get your car, checked out,
Yeah.
however often. And then, like, the most important thing, and your marriage and your relationship, like, a lot of the times you just don't really get, checked up on, like, hey, how are you doing? I know I'm not good enough to just sit down at night after a long day and ask my wife, like, how was your day? How are you doing? I'm so worried about my problems
Right.
selfishly.
Yeah.
It's just difficult. So I'm just thankful for it. It's really opened, my horizons. I heard this quote. I don't know who said it. I heard it off another podcast, but exposure is expansion. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just love that, being exposed to new things, and it's just helping to open my horizons to, what's really important and things like that.
Exposure is expansion. I like that. I had to write
Yeah.
that one down, Justin. That's a good one.
I like it too.
I want to ask you, as we wind down, you and your wife, I mentioned expecting your second child. So you're a dad. How has being a dad helped you see who God is as a father to us? How has that been for you, knowing the responsibility that you have, that God's entrusted you to become a dad? But how does that changed you and how you see him as father?
Yeah, such a good question. And I feel like almost a universal response maybe for most dads. My first thought is like, I'm so glad that like I'm not God. And I'm
Seriously.
like, I'm just so thankful that we have a father that is just so merciful and just so full of grace. And I'm just thinking about my temper, my short temper that I'll have with my 3-year-old who's acting like a teenager. And there's like, 2 or 3 things that go wrong. And it's like that fourth thing, or the no with the stomping on the ground after. And tempers just rise, and I'm so quick to forget. And I'm just thinking and it's funny because every time like stuff like that happens and I raise my voice, and I have to go back and explain to my daughter that daddy apologizes for yelling or screaming or whatever it is that I did. I love you. I'm just frustrated because of X or
Yeah.
Y. Not saying you are bad, or you're not a good listener. It's daddy's frustrated because you did this, or dad was upset because you responded this way. And I think of that and I'm just like, I know God's just like, I always picture God like having a big sense of humor. And I always picture him like when I'm having those conversations and I'm thinking back on him later, like he's just like looking down at me, like arms crossed with like a little smirk and a side eye, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I bet it's annoying when, Laney's not listening to you, huh? And just thinking about like reflecting on like, I'm just like, you
Seriously.
got me, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that's really like my perspective, after becoming a father is just like completely, I mean, just changed my thought process and my approach to how I should be loving, my daughter, my wife, what's going on and things like that. It's just completely changed it. Not to mention the pressure of like leading your household right to the
Yeah.
cross, consistently every day, like setting up to where like, for me and my house, we will serve the Lord and all that we do. And that, our relationship with Christ and God the Father is first and foremost. And um just so thankful for it. And as much pressure and all the things that I said come with that, there's nothing I'd trade it for in the world. And I'm just so thankful, for God's blessings and my wife and I's life with, a daughter and another one on the way. And it's just a tremendous blessing. So thankful for them.
Yeah, I tell people my daughter's 17. I just have one, which is funny when you say your 3-year-old acts like a teenager. I'm like, just wait till she becomes a teenager. That's a different animal, and we're living through it. She's a great kid, and she's on the other side of the awkward years, if you will, now getting ready for her senior year of high school. But I tell people my goal is not to see my daughter be successful in life as far as work, and I hope she has that. Be as successful as far as finding a husband who loves her and loves God. I hope she has that. If she honors God and lives for the Lord for the rest of her life, that's really all I could ever ask for. That's my desire. And then everything else will flow from that. And so I understand that tension. Don't lose that is my advice and encouragement to you, Justin, because it starts at 3 or 4, but blink and suddenly they're 17, 18. And that's still my desire, is to just see my daughter walk with Christ for the rest of her life. Like that's it. I don't really care about anything else that she does. I hope she does a lot of cool things, but if all those cool things happen and she's not walking with the Lord, that's going to pain my heart a little bit. And so I really just want to see her live a life walking with Christ. And all we can do as parents is raise them up the best way possible and then let God do the rest. So
Amen.
that's my
Dude, I love
encouragement
that.
for you, brother. Yeah.
Thank you.
The last question I want to ask you, 2020 was a lot, as we talked about, but right before the pandemic happened, the Justin Simmons Foundation, which is right behind you in the little graphic there, as we're doing this on Zoom, that was birthed and that was born. So why the foundation, and tell me about it, how it's helping people and how can people get involved?
Yeah, my wife and I have always been. This has been a work in progress for the past 4 years. We launched it last year, and we've gone to multiple of our teammates' events, and we've done a lot of research, and we've been constantly picking our brains about what are we both passionate about. What would we love to see expand past football? Like
Yeah.
once football's over, we're thinking bigger picture. Like what do we want to do with this? And we thought of a bunch of different things, and it really just came down to our youth in general, and
That's
just
good.
wanting to help equip our youth in any way possible, to help them reach whatever goals and aspirations they have, or they want to have. And there's so many kids out there that just unfortunately have us not an even start with so many others. And so with the Justin Simmons Foundation, we're not coming to uproot any organizations that are already pouring all of their resources and funds into helping our youth. But we would love, because of the temporary platform that we have, we may be able to bring a little bit more attention. Like I didn't even know there was I didn't even know like this organization, did this for our youth. I like hearing about that. And we could just be kind of the bridge that kind of gaps those things together, and kind of just like shines the spotlight on so many amazing, people, foundations, organizations out there that are doing such amazing work and may just not have the exposure, that they deserve. And that's a lot of what I love to do, is because, there's so many times, the guys will get the credit for, um, doing X, Y, and Z, but there's so many already organizations and things and people that have been doing it for years and years and years and years. And it's like, hey, they're doing the good work. We just wanted to spotlight show. But that's really what the Justin Simmons Foundation is about: empowerment, education, funds and resources, like literally any single thing that we can do to help our youth get to where they want to be is what I'm so passionate about. And I'm such an advocate for, because I was once a kid that got poured into, um, and that was shown that I was important and that I mattered and that my opinions mattered. And there's no way I'd be here today if it wasn't for those select individuals in my life that really poured into me. And it's just our mission to be able to pour into our youth that way, all while doing it, um, with that Christ-like background, just empowering, educating, and really focusing. Like I always wanted people to say, like, anytime they have a conversation with, like my wife or I, or people that are working in our foundation, like there's something different about them. I don't know what it is, but I want to find out. And
Right.
what a cool bridge to introduce someone to, a relationship with the Lord. Never really beating people over the head with the Bible, but just like
Oh, yeah.
interactions with them are really cool. What's your story? And
Mm-hmm.
that's ultimately the biggest goal throughout the whole thing.
What's the website? Is it Justin Simmons Foundation? What's the website?
Yep. Justin Simmons Foundation.org.
.org. Awesome. JustinSimmonsFoundation.org. If you follow Justin on Instagram, you see it. It's Team Jesus. That's the hashtag he uses. And we just appreciate you, my friend, for being here on the show, coming back on the show. I hope you have a great 2021 season, and hopefully I'll see you in person in 2022 if things play its role properly here with PAO. But we're excited for all that's happening with you, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Jason, thank you so much for having me. I love the podcast. Always been a big fan, so I really appreciate you bringing me back and having me, and God bless.
Really thankful to Justin Simmons for being here today on Sports Spectrum. Great conversation. I loved where that went, and it went in a lot of different places. It went to football on the field. It went to prayer. It went to trusting in God, growing in his faith. It went to seeing things, including things like social justice, through the lens of the gospel. Just a lot of good stuff there. Love his foundation as well. If you just search Justin Simmons Foundation, you can check out more online as well on his website. Give him a follow on Instagram and Twitter. And again, let him know that you heard his story here on Sports Spectrum. We do appreciate you for checking us out and for listening today. Check out sportsspectrum.com. That's our website. All of our content's there, our devotionals, our podcasts, different stories all throughout the day on the intersection of sports and faith. That's what we try to do here, bring Jesus back into the sports conversation. And I thought we did that today with Justin Simmons. Thanks again for tuning in. We really do appreciate you. Rate, review, subscribe, tell someone about this podcast, tell someone about Sports Spectrum. It helps get the word out. And join us next time right here on the show. My name is Jason Romano, and I'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your day.